Audio is on. Okay, perfect. So yeah, thank you for that introduction. I'm excited to be here and excited to share this nonlinear journey. This presentation, I will warn you, is nonlinear for sure. And just a few things is that I hope that there'll be someone participating because later on in my presentation, there'll be some opportunities for participation. So you can put your answers in the chat and maybe Kathy can read them or I can read them. I'm going to start off with an image that I took um, in New Mexico of a wonderful mountain range. And so this is just an example of how when I'm out doing field work and whether I'm out doing field work, whether I'm out birding, I see things. And so I really just thought this was a beautiful mountain range with a touch of shadows and, some clouds on the higher peaks there and just these rolling mountains. And then this next image is kind of an interpretation, I would say, of that first image that I just showed in New Mexico. However, I didn't illustrate this interpretation of it. This was illustrated by the tides, and it was the tides in Florida. So this was an image here that I took while on one of my surveys when I was working with Audubon, Florida at Dog Island. And these lines that look like mountain ranges were created by the tide pushing up seeds coming out of the ocean. And I just thought when I was on my survey, how wonderful that connection was between this mountain range in New Mexico and these seeds that were created to look like created came out looking like mountain ranges, but it was by the tide. I just thought that was just a really interesting way to see this little, I guess, maybe phenomenon or coincidence, but it's just sometimes the way I see things when I'm out doing my field work or birding. Okay, so moving on. As Kathy mentioned, that I'm an avian ecologist, I'm a field biologist, I'm also a birder. I love bioacoustics from a research perspective as well as a creative perspective. I'm a natural science illustrator, and I appreciate all of nature. And last but not least, I have embraced multitasking. I am one of those people that just enjoys doing all the things all the time. So that's what this talk is kind of show. Okay, so just to give you a little background, I'm going to piece together some events that overlap with each other. So in 2017, I was fortunate enough to go to the Cornell Lab, attend the Cornell Lab sound recording workshop. And that was really the first time that I was surrounded by a group of people that came from diverse backgrounds in a sense of they were researchers, they were writers, they were biologists, they were musicians. But one thing we had all in common was we were very interested in sound recording and learning and mastering our technique of sound recording. And this was the first time that I had the opportunity to use a parabolic mic to do to record. And I'm going to tell you that using a parabolic mic completely changed my world and how I hear pretty much when I'm birding. At the same time, I was working at the New York Botanical Garden. I worked in a herbarium, and I worked with a lot of different plant specimens. And while I was there, New York Botanical Garden had a botanical illustration program. And since I was working there, I had that privilege of being able to take courses there as well. And so I started taking courses, and I was focusing on botanical illustration at the time. And during these courses, that's where I really gained an understanding of light on form. And I found a really deep love of graphite and learning how to manipulate the graphite to really capture the fantastic details in plants and use the shading and use the lighting to really make things pop. And then from there, here's a cyclamen that one of my final projects that I did. And from there, while I was taking botanical illustration classes, I met a few people that introduced me to a workshop that was given regularly at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. And it was there where I started to illustrate from the dioramas other organisms. I started to expand, and I was taking the technique that I learned on light on form and this delicate graphite technique that is used in botanical illustration and started applying them to other organisms. And so it was a really, really nice experience to not only was I surrounded by, like-minded people, but it was really nice to have that kind of exclusive time at the museum where I was able to just sit there and illustrate from these specimens. And so while this was happening, like I said, I'm one of those people that do all the things at the same time. I was still birding. So I was going to work, I was taking classes, I was doing a workshop, and then I was still birding, practicing my recording skills. And so mastering recording, birding and illustrating and kind of learning and mastering all of these skills at the same time, there was just a natural progression to bird art. And so from this point on in this presentation is where I would like if anyone can participate, want to take some wild guesses, I'm going to play some audio. So please make sure that your volume is up and you have headphones or whatever you need to hear clearly if you want to participate. Okay, so I am going to play the first sound. I'll play it one more time if anyone wants to take a guess and put it in the chat. Yes, green heron, exactly. So in this story, what's happening now is while I'm out recording, practicing my recording technique, I'm having these deep observations of these different species that I'm recording. Because when you're recording, you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're just listening. You're not even paying too much mind of making a list and going after different species. You're really hyper focused on the species you're recording. And so with this bird in particular, that inspired me to create this next illustration of green heron using that graphite technique that I learned for botanical illustration and applying it to the details of the feathers. And this was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work to get those feathers in like that, but when I got done with it, I felt, wow, yeah, I really made these feathers look fluffy and look like they were really popping out. And this was all inspired through sound recording. Okay, so moving on to the next one. This one is, I'm pretty sure most everyone will be able to get this one. It's a little bit low, the volume is low, so you have to listen a little closer. Great. Let's see. Great horned owl, exactly. Yep. So great horned owl. And this recording I made in the Bronx while I was working at the New York Botanical Garden. And so that was one of the nice things about working at New York Botanical Garden is that I had this opportunity to be there before hours and after hours. And so I ended up having this really wonderful experience of being able to watch these great horned owls. First, I was able to record them. This was during their courting time. And I ended up being able to watch them start nesting. They nested into the little crevice in the building that I was working in. And so it was really a special moment because I was able to get the recording of when they first started courting, watching them every evening when I would leave the office, the herbarium and going home. And then in the morning, I'd come extra early to find them nesting. And then they ended up having chicks, which was fantastic, being able to watch the male continuously bring food to the female and the chicks. And then the chicks fledging, this one here, this center photo here, that was a very intense moment. So basically, that particular one decided it was time to explore the world and it fell out of the nest, but the next floor underneath that the nest had a nice ledge. I ended up naming this chick Ledge Baby. It was really exciting to see this little chick here. A lot of times it would be like looking in the window of different people's offices, so that was also very entertaining, but it was also very terrifying because the crows knew that chick was there, and so they would harass it on a daily basis. So my lunch times really were intense because I would go and check on Ledge Baby all the time. And then I was able to watch all the way from, conception to the end to fledging, which was fantastic. And so once again, this entire experience from sound recording to watching, them all the way through fledging inspired me to do another illustration in graphite, because at this time I'm completely in love with graphite, of this great horned owl. And again, getting into the details of every little feather and really striving to get this soft touch of owl feathers. Okay, so now, once again, still at New York Botanical Garden, migration birding is amazing there. It's almost like a little bit spoiled. And this was my first intentional migration birding. So basically, the entire winter I spent with my headphones on, listening to sounds, memorizing them, and just really getting my sound ID down. And so during that migration, it was fantastic. We had prairie warbler, magnolia, ovenbirds, chestnut-sided, black-throated blue, black and white. But then there's also a mystery bird. So this next species, I am also pretty sure a lot of you will know this song. Oops. I'm going to play it one more time. All right, let's see what's in the chat here. Yes, Parula, Northern Parula, exactly. So, interesting thing is, as some of us may know, Parulas, they love the canopy. That is serious warbler neck happening. And it was really difficult for me to see this bird. I actually recorded the bird before I ever had the opportunity to get a good look at one. And it took me quite some time to really get a good look. Oops. And so that inspired me to do my next piece, which happened to be in color, one of the first color ones that I did in color pencil. And this is the image that I finally captured of Northern Parula. And so I ended up having these two Parulas. I illustrated these Parulas actually before I really, really got a good look of one. But it was inspired by my sound recording. I just thought it was such a cool sound. So my next sound I'm going to play is very cute. I'll play it again. Any guesses in the chat? I think this one is a bit... No. Ah, yep. Yeah, we have waxwing, exactly. So cedar waxwing. And so here we have a cedar waxwing, and this one actually was not, I wasn't inspired by the call to illustrate this one. It was just the softness of cedar waxwing that really captured my attention. And so cedar waxwings, they just almost have like a velvet look. They just feel like they have a velvet look to them. And so I thought that'd be really fun to try and capture. But at the same time, I had the cedar waxwing I created, but also Bohemian waxwing. I couldn't help but put the two of them together. But I just really enjoyed creating this piece in color pencil because of the challenge of being able to see if I could get the color pencil technique, which I'm now transferring the graphite technique into the color pencil technique and see if I can capture that velvet look. And it was a really fun challenge. Okay, so now moving on to more Florida experience. I'm going to play this next call. I'll play it again. Any guesses? Ah, yes, very good. King Rail. Awesome. So, this was an amazing, amazing experience. This was in Tallahassee, and I was intentionally out recording. So there are times that, I go out birding. There's times that I'm out, like my focus is target species for recording. And so that in this particular time, I was targeting red-headed woodpeckers and in a location that I knew from birding there already that they come consistently. And so I was pretty much waiting for the red-headed woodpeckers to show up, especially that this group I know in particular had a few juveniles that were coming through. So I wanted to see if I can get both adult and juvenile calls. And so I'm basically just waiting there. And I had my recorder running so I don't miss the moment. And I am in a freshwater marsh area, just standing over a bridge, just waiting, because that marsh area has tons of snags in it. And so a lot of times the red-headed woodpeckers would be there. And all of a sudden, I'm just standing there, and this king rail just belts out this sound. And it was so close to me and I had my headphones on too. So it's like I felt the vibration inside of me. It was so crazy. That was definitely one of the wilder recording experiences that I had. Even my description of it right now isn't even as, perfect as that moment was. So I just couldn't believe what was happening. I knew the bird was close to me, so I froze and I did my best not to even like take any deep breaths at all because I did not want to spook the bird. I was really hoping that it will call again, but it never did. But what ended up happening is that whoops, it ended up sneaking out of the cattails, and I got a glimpse of it, and I couldn't believe how close that I was. And so I slowly picked up my camera, hoping that don't spook this bird, and got one shot of it, just this one shot. And it was really exciting, and I just was able to watch it just weave through the cattails, and next thing you know, it just disappeared, and I never heard it or saw it again. But it was a really fantastic moment, and it really inspired me um, to illustrate this, going back to graphite, king rail, and I ended up throwing the chicks in there for fun. So a lot of times what happens is that I will be inspired by something in the field, whatever situation or fun experience that I have, and I will end up doing research using my own images or other people's images for references. That's where I got the chick images from. But as an artist, it's really important not to copy a photographer's images because then that's copyright issues and so forth. So a lot of times they're just reference images, and I piece them together from my own imagination, I would say, by using those references. And just to give you a close up, my favorite part of this illustration was doing the chicks and being able to get that fuzzy feel of chicks with the graphite, which was a lot of fun. Okay, so moving on to the next experience here. So, gonna play this. recording. This is also in Florida. This is in the Panhandle. So if you recognize some of those birds, put them in the chat. Royal terns. Yes. Anything, any other? I'll play it one more time, a bit of it one more time to see if anyone else can recognize any other calls in there. Oops. Yeah, so there are sandwich terns, laughing gulls, royal terns, black skimmers, Caspian tern. And so this was from one of my sites that I used to survey in the Panhandle, and colony life is extraordinary. So colony life is extraordinary because everything is happening at the same time. So there are birds that are mating, there are birds laying eggs, chicks hatching, chicks are dying, everyone is fighting, everyone is eating, everyone is starving. All of this is happening at the same time, and everyone is screaming at the same time. And so that's what really makes colony life exciting because it's just that when birds nest in these large colonies this way, it's unbelievable when you think about all the things happening at the same time. Sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's happy. There's just so much happening. So, whoops. Part of the colony, the more silent group of the colony, are brown pelicans. And so the brown pelicans here, I was lucky enough to capture the chicks, which is always an awesome thing to see. And my next piece is of a brown pelican. And so with this story here, this is actually the reverse of what usually has happened, what I've been talking about recently, which is me being inspired through an experience. But in this situation, I had, at this time when I illustrated this brown pelican, I had never even imagine that I would be monitoring brown pelicans. So when I did this illustration, I went to the Bronx Zoo to watch pelicans, and I did some quick sketches there. And then I went to the museum later on that week and worked from a specimen. But while I was doing this illustration, I never thought that I would be monitoring brown pelicans. And so these are one of the special pieces for me because it's almost, I'm not saying that, it was a prediction, but it was just such an interesting coincidence of like, wow, I illustrated this, a few years ago, and I never thought while I was doing this illustration that I would be able to see brown pelican chicks and monitor the colony. So it's very special to me. So moving on to the next part of this talk. Well, what is perfection? So far, I've shown all the pieces not all the pieces, but a lot of pieces that I've done, at their final stage. But there are a lot of things that happen before the final stage. And so some of them, my sketches, they start off like this. They're scribbly, they're messy, they're just these ideas that may and may not work. Lots of trying, lots of getting annoyed. It's not working out. Lots of erasing happening, and just being honest, this is what it looks like before the final. A lot of times, artists or, anyone, musician or whomever, will show the final product, but in the end, there's a lot of things that happen beforehand. And so I just wanted to really show that, these types of things, they go on and these sketches happen. And I'll be honest, there are some times I have tears coming out of my eyes because I just can't get the picture to look the way I want it to look. So it can be very frustrating sometimes. Okay, so our next sound is going to be, I'm not going to tell you, but you should, maybe someone will know. I love the bill snaps. Let's see. Not yet. I'm gonna keep playing. No answer yet. Yeah, boat tail grackle, exactly. Yep. So I love the bill snaps of boat tail grackles. They are really fun to listen to. And that's what in this recording in particular inspired my next drawing here of boat tail grackles. And it was just a sketch that I did for fun one of the evenings. Like I said that there's a lot of drafts that happen before the final. And here's another example of me going through different sketches and scribbling and ripping pieces of paper up to get to a final drawing. This drawing of a roadrunner I did, I was asked when I was working in New Mexico, I was doing field surveys in New Mexico. I was asked to do an illustration that would be given to the landowners that as a thank you that because they allowed us to do surveys on their lands. So I was very happy to do this project for them. And so here's just a kind of what the tweet looks like with the illustration together and me while I'm out in New Mexico working. And so a lot of times I work in graphite. That is my favorite, but I do work in color pencil, and I've been exploring alcohol-based markers for special projects as well. I don't really like to use watercolor that much. The alcohol-based markers and color pencils are a lot of fun for me. And so moving on to another color piece that I did a little while ago was for Audubon Adventures. I did a special project for the Florida scrub jay. And so this was a lot of fun because I ended up going to the habitat and I went a few weekends out to observe Florida scrub jays and go into the habitat, take a look at the closer look at the plants that were there, looking for the different species also that are in those special habitats. So that was a lot of fun. And I really like to work, I like to be able to go out in the field and really capture the emotion of that habitat and see if I can translate it. So this was a really fun project for me to do, especially because I was able to go to the habitat. And of course I used uh, images as references, but for the plants and just getting the feel of everything, that was from visiting the habitat and spending time there. And so now moving on to another color piece. So I wanted to be the Bird of the Year artist for the ABA for quite some time. I had no clue how to do it, and I had no clue how they found their artist. I had no clue at all. And every year that would pass by, I would just say, "Well, that's an amazing opportunity that year's artist had." And so I sometimes get these nudges of, "All right, let me just contact somebody." And so that's what I did. But I didn't just contact one person. I emailed a lot of people and said, "Hey, how can I be that person? Here's some of my work. Here's my resume." And I didn't get a response at first. I think I was emailing the wrong people. And then next thing you know, I got contacted by them and they asked me to do it. And I said yes before I even knew that it was the golden-winged warbler. I was like, I don't care if it was a house sparrow, I'm doing this. But when I found out it was a golden-winged warbler, I was very excited and felt very just happy and honored that, okay, I'm going to get to do this amazing project. But once that excitement passed, I went into panic because I said, I don't know what I'm going to do because they also gave me, the freedom to design whatever I wanted. Um, So then after the excitement, I went into panic mode. Um, oops. So here's a quick animation of, once again, just showing you the different processes that I went through to get to where, to completing the project. There's no sound. And so, oops. And so my vision of this cover when I was in panic mode trying to figure out what to do, which the idea actually came to me while I was birding, was I really wanted to recognize that these birds that are migratory species, they are everyone's birds. And so that's why I decided to incorporate the wintering habitat where the female is on the bottom. That's Arenal volcano in Costa Rica. And I created this hybrid tree that you would never see because it's not a real tree, but it's like that was my imaginary part where I connected the two habitats in this one tree. And then I drew the male on a willow species singing with showing a spectrogram singing on the breeding grounds. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to really um, highlight the importance of habitat conservation on the wintering grounds, on the breeding grounds, and understanding the full life cycle. And another thing that I wanted to add, I added the spectrogram just to really show that when we think about losing birds, a lot of times, as birders, we're thinking about losing them visually. That is our first thing. We're going to lose them visually. But imagine birding and you don't hear any birds at all. We're losing their sounds as well. And so that's what I wanted to highlight that in a sense, we're also going through a sound extinction to a sound extinction, if you want to call it that way. Um, and so that was my goal of designing what I did, just incorporating everything, the full annual life cycle, understanding female birds, understanding winter habitats, and also highlighting, that we are also going through a sound extinction. And so that's was my message behind this piece that I did. Um, okay, and so moving on to the next piece. So I'm going to play this sound, and unless you read this article, if you did, don't answer. Um, but I had another article published in ABA Birding Magazine, and this is a very special moment for me as well. It is based on sound, so I'm going to play the sound for you. Anyone have a guess? White-crowned pigeon. That's one guess. Ground dove. You are on the right track. Okay, so the story behind this sound basically is one day I was getting ready to go do a field survey and I heard this sound. This is in the Panhandle. This is in Apalachicola in Florida. And I heard this sound and I was like, that sounds very strange. What is that? Usually I'm pretty in tune with the soundscape where I am, and I was like, that does not sound right. But I also couldn't place it. I kind of thought gosh, it sounds like an Inca dove, but I don't know. There's something wrong. But I couldn't chase that sound because I was literally getting in my truck going to do a survey. So I couldn't go after it. Um, and so I just left it alone. And basically, I just had to chalk it up like, okay, well, I don't know what that is, and maybe I'll hear it later, maybe I won't. I don't know. Later it came, and I heard it again. I grabbed my equipment, I ran out, and I recorded the bird. I could not find this bird. I could not visually find this bird, but I was able to record it. I went back home, I went through my resources, and I couldn't find anything that was an exact match. I was pretty much stumped. And so finally, I just kept going after the sound. Finally, I actually saw the bird. Oops, I'm not moving here. Oh no, something's happening. Oops. Okay, finally I saw the bird. And when I saw the bird, I was like, what is that? I'm getting Inca dove vibes, but I'm also getting like a system error sound in my head that that's not an Inca dove. But I'm also getting like other dove vibes. And I don't know. And I'm watching the bird now make the sound. And I was just looking at it, I was like, something is going on. There's something strange about this bird. And I was able to get another other shots of it, but it was a very kind of secretive bird, very shy. So as soon as like I was there, only a matter of moments that it was gonna just leave. And so I ended up sending the information out to a few people, to Nathan Pipelo, who he wrote the Peterson Field Guide to bird songs, and which is a fantastic book. It breaks down the spectrograms. I use that a lot as a resource. And also Peter Pyle, because now I have images. And so through consulting with them, also looking at my own research, pretty much through sound, I found first documented, I would say, because we looked into resources, no one has documented this before, an Inca dove hybrid with a common ground dove. And so this was a really special moment, not only because it was like, wait a minute, I just discovered a hybrid through sound, which was amazing, but it was also a really nice opportunity for me to incorporate illustration. And so this is one of those moments where it's just like, wow, all of the things that I do, I can put them all together, where it's birding, it's sound analysis, and illustration all in one. Um, and so what I ended up drawing was I illustrated the different tails of this bird that I saw, because that was one of the, besides the sound, that was one of the characters that really stood out as hybrid. And so I ended up illustrating tails of mourning dove to rule that out, to rule out the characters of mourning dove. Illustrated Inca dove, common ground dove, and then the tail of the um, Inca dove, common ground dove hybrid. And so part of the story I left out is that there was one day that I finally got a flight shot of this bird. And that's the flight shot. In the flight shot is where I really got to see the tail. And so if you look at these images here that I illustrated, it has the length, a longer length like an Inca dove, but the shape of a common ground dove. And if you look at the outer three rectrices in an Inca dove on the far left, it has a significant amount of white, whereas the common ground dove doesn't necessarily have it, but the hybrid has almost like an intermediate amount. So between the shape, the intermediate amount of that, the sound, as well as other characters that we peeled out that are not shown here. It came down to it's a common ground dove crossed with an Inca dove. What's interesting about this is about 6 or 7 months before I found this hybrid, I found an Inca dove. And in the same on like the same 2 blocks. So I'm not saying that that particular Inca dove that I found a few months ago is the parent, but it's possible. It's just kind of coincidental that it was literally like within the same 2 blocks. Um, and so I have just one more illustration to show. This is something that I did recently just for fun, because field sparrow songs are amazing. So I'm going to play that this last recording for everyone. And then a random snow bunting that I've done before. So yeah, and that's it.
Very nice. So we did have one question. Cindy was wondering, do doves, they crossbreed?
There are many records, many records of species hybridizing. And I think what's happening is because there's a lot of range expansion happening with different species that it's becoming more and more common, because of certain species having some range expansion. I mean, when I did the research on the Inca dove and common ground dove, there are breeding populations that are happening. Believe possibly in Alabama and Louisiana. They're kind of like moving closer to us in Florida. So yeah, it's happens. And I think happening more and more once again because of some species having range expansions.
Nice. And Karen wanted to know, on average, how long does it take for you to do the graphite pictures
Oh.
that you draw?
So with my process, it takes me longer to figure out what I'm illustrating. Once I figure it out, it happens very quickly. So graphite, I mean, it depends on the piece, but it could take me anything from 10 hours to 30 hours, depending on what it is. So like, for example, the green heron, that was definitely a 30-hour piece. Whereas the boat-tailed grackles, that was, I don't know, maybe 4 hours, maybe.
Nice. Any other questions?
What illustrations are you working on right now?
Oh, right now I'm working on a piece that I was commissioned for. It's a hermit thrush.
Oh,
Yeah. So I'm working on a hermit thrush right now, and probably after that, I might be working on a European European kingfisher.
cool.
Now, are you doing it in graphite or colored pencils?
Color pencil. Yeah, when I usually do stuff for if someone asks me to do something, it's in color pencil. Um, Although I'd love to just do it in graphite. So-
And Sydney wants to know, when did you start drawing?
Well, I've always kind of been a scribbler. I've always drew things, but I just never really liked the subjects that were given to me, for example, in school and so forth. Being honest, I don't want to draw humans. So that requires a lot of human watching. I'd rather not do that. Um, there was a moment in time that I stopped drawing because I just couldn't figure out what I really wanted to be passionate about illustrating. And so I would say it was in 2017 when I started taking those courses at Botanical Garden.
Nice. Now, Jill wanted to know, do you have any published books?
Not yet. I am hoping to at some point in time. Give me 1 second. My battery is dying. I need to plug my computer back in.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, I thought I had it plugged in. Yeah, so no, not yet. I don't have any books yet, but maybe I'm hoping for the future. I just don't know what yet. That's the holdup. Like I said, the process is like, well, what do I do? But once I figure it out, then I just do it.
Lee said she likes using color pencils as well.
Nice.
Martha said your work is amazing. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Um, JT Kant said, interesting that you mentioned a European kingfisher. Have you done an illustration of a belted kingfisher?
No, not yet. But someone wants specifically the European kingfisher, so, but I haven't done any kingfishers yet, actually. So, but I have lots of recordings of kingfishers, sound recordings.
Yeah, that would be a fun one to do, I think.
Yeah, the bill would be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cindy was saying you're a great talent. And
Thank
Teresa
you.
said she is glad she could join tonight. Beautifully done. Christiana said amazing presentation, beautiful pictures, and exciting sounds. Thank you very much.
Good.
Very good.
Can you talk more about the sound aspect and putting them on eBird and for Merlin?
Say again?
Can you talk more about the sound and putting them on eBird and Merlin?
Oh, yeah, of course. So, pretty much, you can use your phone if you don't have recording equipment. I like to use I use Merlin occasionally. I like to use Song Meter Touch by Wildlife Acoustics. And so that's a really nice app. I've been using it for a while, but I use that in particular because then I download it and I just clean up the recording, and I upload them to eBird, um, and of course, attached to the eBird checklist.
Very good.
So I imagine you're one of the people that like eBird is lacking some of like our common birds people don't record, like
Yeah, that's me.
heron. So you do that, right? You purposely go like if you
I,
see like there's not
yep,
enough.
I do that. I do a lot of intentional recording. Yeah. And then I have a few of my sound recordings are on Merlin. So like Royal Tern, the example of Royal Tern is on, that's one of them is mine, Cactus Wren, Henslow Sparrow. And if I don't know if you know Lark Wire, they were using some of my recordings for that as well. Yeah, so they're scattered around. But I need more.
Very cool.
Cool.
Now,
What's
have you
been
ever
the
done an
hardest one?
e-ink? Oh, I'm sorry. What?
What's been your more challenging ones to record?
I would say the most challenging ones would be our waders because, when it comes to great egret or great blue heron or little blue, they usually give out sounds when they're flying away from you. So, it's like, oh, it's there, and now I just missed it. Great. You know what I mean? So those have been the most challenging for me. Like I would love to do a trip. And I don't know, when I'm back in Florida again, I might plan this where I just kayak and I just sit out there and wait. Because when it comes to wading birds, that's where my numbers are really low because they're really hard to get.
And how about the rookery sound, the different sounds the babies make?
Yeah, I have a few of those. So I've been lucky to get the rookery ones, but haven't been able to get the ones when they're just like out foraging and next thing you know, they're flying away screaming and that's the end of that. So
And Cindy wanted to know, do you sell your drawings, photos, drawings?
so I do I usually do commissions where if someone wants something special, I will do that. Sometimes the ones that I just do just for fun, I have maybe too much of an attachment to them. So,
And then Emily said, I remember hearing your presentation on a big year in Florida and I
oh,
admired your work.
thank you.
And Lee said, I think those waiters, I think she's talking about the waiters, know when you're going to record. That's
Yeah,
right.
they do. They know. They're like, oh, there she goes. All right, time to
Yeah,
leave.
yeah. Very good. And Cindy said, aw. So good job. And
Excellent.
did you ever do any recording at night? Evening recording? Have you ever
Yeah, I've done some I have
migration?
Chuck Will's widow. evening recordings and, some owls as well. Um, so yeah, I've done some evening recording. But I mean, being honest, it's really hard for me to stay up past 10:30. So 10:30 is stretching it. So like
Sure.
that's because I get up really early. So
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
Very enjoyable.
yeah, well, thank you so much
Mhm.
for having me.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
You
you
have
for
such
giving your
great
time.
drawings.
Okay.
Inspiring. Yeah.
Mm.
Beautiful.